If you have heard yourself saying in the last week, month, year that you're tired or you're always tired, or you know somebody who's always saying they're tired, then you are listening to the right episode. This is episode 49 of Truth or Trend, helping people figure out what are the things that are really missing from their lives that are keeping them from feeling their best, and whether or not the things that are being promoted to them are truly helpful or if it's just a bunch of marketing. Hey,
Mhm.
everybody. We have a repeat guest. We have our second repeat guest in the history of the podcast, Dr. Michael Gaeta, back by popular demand to talk about some really interesting things. This last weekend, the three of us had the great fortune of coming together for hopefully an annual event that we have started
At
in
least.
with bringing together all kinds of great, yeah, at least an annual event, all
Mhm.
kinds of great practitioners from around the world. It was, I think, profoundly successful. I hope we can all share some of the things that we learned from other people on the show today. But after talking, we decided we need to get Dr. Gaeta back on here to talk about immune health, stealth pathogens, and the relation to cancer and specifically chronic fatigue. Because in
Mm.
the last episode Dr. Gaeta was on, he mentioned casually that 93% of those individuals out there struggling with chronic fatigue have a chronic infection, which I think is bears bringing our attention back to in this space. And what we're doing, we're trying to help people realize is, as he said in the last time he was on the show, there are three areas that tend to be overlooked that we're the one that we're looking at, and that is depletion of nutrients, infection, and toxicity. So Dr. Gaeta, thank you for coming back. And thanks for being here. And what do you have to tell everybody after last weekend's experience?
Well, always a pleasure to be with you guys. And yeah, we were together just like yesterday or two, or 2 days ago. And yeah, kudos to both of you for just creating an amazing event. I think it really set a new standard for clinical education, not just in the quality of education, but all the things around it. You know, the venue, the food, the healing practitioners that were available, the community, the interaction, the feedback. It was just beautifully done, and I think, yeah, in our niche or space, it's definitely set a new standard for awesomeness. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah,
New
and the
standard for
workshop,
awesomeness. I like that.
a new standard. We have to think about what kind of a workshop you could be doing for us at the next one, Dr. Gata. I'm
Well,
sure
there's
that you'll come up
93
with some.
topics, so I'm sure we'll find something.
Yeah.
Sure, we could dust something off.
So I think the inspiration from you, Dr. V, was Dr. Gata sharing that if you have to wipe more than twice,
That was the apex takeaway of the weekend.
well, let's talk about that a little bit, right? What is going on? You said something about a damp colon, and
Hmm.
these bidets are wildly popular, and everybody's talking about those now. So maybe they're missing out on the information if they have to hit with the bidet twice. But can you talk a little bit more about that? Because this is real practical takeaways for
This
anybody
is
who's out
super
there.
practical.
If you're wiping more than
Down and
twice,
dirty.
maybe that's why you're so tired.
Yeah, right, right. Well, yeah, so this was an insight from a colleague who I was speaking with, and we were just talking shop, and we got on the subject of berberine, and partly because it's so effective in addressing gut infections
Hmm.
and other things. You know, it's famous for its metabolic glycemic effects, but does a lot of other things. And in Chinese medicine, it's probably our best herb. This is philodendron bark, huang bai, in Chinese medicine. This is the concentrate wisely used as the source of berberine in MediHerb's berberine active. Very good choice. There's other foods and plants and things that have berberine in it. But the philodendron bark was an exceptional choice because this herb is huge in Chinese medicine for addressing what we call damp heat, drying or resolving dampness and clearing heat. Also great for the liver, does a lot of other things. And so when you're, finishing up number two, and it's time to wipe, if you have to wipe a lot, that is a indication of what we would call in Chinese medicine dampness. And using a damp resolving herb in a damp condition is kind of a perfect match. So this colleague was saying, he asked his patients about bowel habits, as we all do. And he said, and I asked him, well, how often do you have to wipe? Typically, usually. And
Hmm.
if it's like, 4, 5, 6 times, anything more than two, then there's a damp condition, and the indication there would be to use anywhere from 2 to 4 tablets of the Medior berberine active to resolve that dampness.
Wow, what a great practical reminder for
Right?
everybody on a daily basis.
Massive.
What
Yeah.
about the gut
We should have
flora
got this
complex?
information out during the COVID toilet paper crunch.
Oh man,
The
totally,
crisis.
totally.
We might not
Conserve
have had
your
a toilet
toilet
paper
paper.
crisis.
Conserve TP. Resolve
Right.
damp.
There it is.
Berberine active.
That's so what
Awesome.
now there is berberine in gut flora complex as well, right?
There
So
is the same source,
could you
philodendron
talk
bark.
about the difference between one or the other? If it was dampness like that, would you
Yeah,
stick with the
yeah.
berberine active or would you do the gut flora complex?
Yeah. Well, I attended, one of our teachers. All three of us is Kerry Bone,
Mm,
and on the herbal field, he's one of the greatest herbalists in the world as a clinician and author and an educator. And so I attended his launch seminar for Gut Flora Complex in New York, where I used to live. And so, as was typical, we go out to dinner afterwards and talk shop and how's the family and such. And I said, dude, I don't know if I said dude, but I said,
you probably did.
that was a South Park episode, Kyle and Kyle,
Oh,
dude, and just go back and forth saying dude. So I said, dude, this would have been just analyzing the formula. This should really be called gut pathogen complex.
mm.
And he said, I agree with you completely, but the lawyers wouldn't let us name it gut
Ah,
pathogen complex.
okay.
But it really, in designing, brilliant formula. In designing the formula, oregano oil, philodendron bark, andrographis, it was really to clear gut pathogens.
Mm,
Now, there's a whole big to do about SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. It's not a great term because it's rarely just the small intestine and it's rarely just bacteria.
right.
So I like to use the term, gut pathogen overgrowth. But gut flora complex is is preferred when there's any consideration of any type of gut infection,
Mhm.
fungal especially. Berberine is superb. Philodendron bark is superb at anything fungal,
Mm,
as is garlic. So the differentiation there, Dustin, I would say is I use gut flora complex typically 3 or 4 a day for gut infections. So we come back with a stool test. They're loaded with whatever pathogen, the bad guys, on
yep.
the report.
Yep.
And berberine, I'm going to use, I may top it up with, 2 or 3 berberine active, but I'm thinking berberine a little bit more for that dampness, have to wipe a lot, and for anything metabolic. So, metabolic syndrome,
Sure.
diabetes, insulin resistance. It's not really, it doesn't really improve insulin sensitivity, but it's really, well, actually, it does do that somewhat because it beat metformin in a head-to-head, and that's one of the mechanisms of metformin. So it
Right.
probably does improve insulin sensitivity somewhat, but it's a good part of the glycemic metabolic syndrome pack.
Dr. V, are you using both of those? And when do you go back? When do you reach for berberine active versus gut flora complex yourself?
So thank you. I reach for berberine active when I'm looking to go more after the blood sugar, the gut
Yep.
pancreas
Yep.
axis, and gut flora when it's more intestinal primary would be
Yep.
my consideration between the two. Physically, the physical manifestations of a colon issue is going to be low back pain, right? How many people have low back pain? And so the mechanism
Mhm.
there is the quadratus lumborum muscle that attaches from the ribs to the pelvis. Spazzes when the colon is compromised. And so gut flora is a stellar consideration there. IT band syndrome for the athletes, the tension, the pain on weakness on the outside of the leg is also a manifestation of the colon. Hey, headaches. I know a guy that talks about headaches.
Who could that be?
The, the whole head headache is a colon issue. So gut flora is a
Hmm.
stellar consideration there. When it's more of a blood sugar concern, then I mean GLPs and all that, the peptide stuff right now that's all popular. Berbeриne's kind of the natural alternative
Yeah.
for somebody trying to lose weight and looking at the peptides, the GLP 1, 2, 3s. That's going to manifest as tennis elbow is a blood sugar issue.
Huh.
Carpal tunnel syndrome is a blood sugar
Wow.
issue.
Wow.
So physical manifestations, that's where it's going to show up. And then if it's the blood sugar concerns, again, carpal tunnel, tension in the side of the neck is a yeast concern. So if there's yeast overgrowth, gut flora works great there. Sorry, I skipped. I
Mhm.
went
I was
back
going to
and
say, I
forth a
think people
little
are going to
bit
need to back up and back up and back up and listen to that many times,
there.
which is great. And I think
That helps our ratings.
I've heard people say this many times. And by the way, just as a side note here, the way that you're connecting these right to the areas where you're going to experience intention, I think was one of the most mind-blowing things for the practitioners in your workshop, right? Where you're able to identify that muscle, show them the belly of the muscle is tender, and then tense until you can bring in the appropriate thing that is specific to that person. The FBI agent that you had worked on pulled me aside, and he just looked at me and goes, "Who is this guy?" Right? Like, he was just blown away.
He's not on our list.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I do want to take a second here just to pause and before we move on to let everybody who is listening, because I know a lot of you are interested in this, that we are going to be bringing Dr. Verzal back, and we're looking at April 25th right now. And if we get enough people by the end of this week, as this goes live today, this is going to be a reality for everybody. And we're going to be able to do some more workshopping, talk more about these headaches, make more people blown away and fascinated by what is possible when you get precise as Dr. V can be with all of this. And he also has a course coming up with you, Dr. Gaeta, correct? On the headache.
It does. Looking forward to it. It's going to be
so the
amazing.
course with Gaeta is going to be a little bit more patient-centric, right? To the sufferer,
first one,
the first one, and then we'll dig deeper into the clinician aspect. The one in April is going to be clinician focused or centric. And by the way, on all that, it was really cool to meet so many people that have been listening to the podcast and all the fine Texans.
Yeah, a lot of fans out there for good reason.
It was a wonderful weekend.
Great to get that feedback. And okay, so I'm not to pivot, but I love that we're on this what you're saying with
Pivot's
the
good.
muscle connection. But the other thing that I heard Dr. Verzal say this weekend that I think is worth repeating is he asked the question. He goes, "Do you know what makes the wolf, the leader of the wolf pack, what we call the alpha?"
Oh yeah,
alpha wolf.
What makes the alpha the alpha? Now, I wonder what's going through everybody's minds right now when we ask that. Right, there's a lot of answers that come to people's minds, but Dr. V's answer blew me away, and I think it's appropriate to what we're talking about today. Dr. V, we want to tell him what makes the alpha the alpha?
Yeah, so I came across a study that they actually studied these alpha wolves and determined that the alpha wolf is the one with the most parasites. Because so the mechanism there is parasites cause an reduction of GABA, the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. So that alpha wolf is uninhibited. So you try to confront the alpha wolf, and they're like, "Hey, I'm going, man. Don't get in my way," right? And so we see that with kids, even, they're not the alpha wolf, but the kid that has a parasite is going to be obstinate and
I'm telling you 100%. That's my older brother. Growing up, he had zero inhibitions. This guy was it was absolutely wild, and he had zero fear ever. Wow. And he would also go into the creek and just grab a fish out of the creek and eat it raw, right? So he had a lot of exposure to all of these. But looking back, you can say, wow, that guy definitely had zero inhibitions, and he would become the alpha. We moved so much as kids, and I'm telling you, this is a story that I don't tell often, but we would move almost every year to a different school for a lot of different reasons. He would seek out whoever was considered the leader of the local gang, and he would beat him up publicly and everybody and declare himself the new leader within the first week. Okay, so when we talk about alphas, right?
Wow,
that's parasites. Hardcore. And that whole book, This Is Your Brain on Parasites, right, is what that's talking about. It's fascinating to me. Fascinating.
So it's one of the main ones is toxoplasmosis. It's toxoplasma. So wolves infected with that parasite are 46 times more likely to become pack leaders.
Wow. Well, maybe we should all get cats then. Maybe we become more fearless.
Get me some Toxo.
That's so amazing. Yeah. Maybe we've stumbled onto something. Maybe this is what we should be supplying our frontline soldiers with.
Like the old 1930s ads of eat these parasites to lose weight, huh?
Right.
Right. That was when they were talking about smoking camels to aid digestion.
So we've taken a weird turn here, but it also can be something that can impact your regularity in your bowel movements too, right? So that's something that you could be looking at. and
So
seeing.
parasites
Well,
want to
and
be fed, so they're
specifically,
going to close those valves. They're going to cause, the valves of the intestine to close so that they keep that poop in there to feed off of it. Right?
right, and it's worldwide, the primary cause of diarrhea worldwide are parasites.
Mm.
Wow.
So it can go either way.
Okay.
And again, a lot of that
Pun
is in.
intended.
Wow.
Carry on, sorry.
Carry on, please. Yes.
Just saying.
Let's talk about real life people. Like we brought this back to it last time. So somebody may not realize that they're uninhibited or that they don't have fear, right? That's not something they're going to recognize in themselves, but their definite bowel movements are going to be something they know about, right? Like you said,
They
it could
do.
be diarrhea or it could be absolutely constipation, depending on the parasite.
Yep.
What are some other things that somebody can recognize? Because that's one of the most common questions I get. Well, how do I know? How do I know if I have parasites? What are the
Oh,
tests that I
yeah.
should do? How do I
Yeah.
figure this out? Let's give them some more information on how they can start to think whether or not they should begin a parasite purging protocol.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So there's a couple ways to look at it. So one is test first and then treat if it's verified. So that's like mindset one. Mindset two, which I'm kind of getting more comfortable with, is that everybody's got parasites to some extent from the water supply. These are microscopic parasites. So for folks who want to test, well, okay. So your first question was about symptoms. So the kind of the classic symptom is the itchy anus, that that itchy feeling,
Right.
throughout the day or around poop time, that's a sign. Weight loss. So underweight, inability to lose weight, inability to gain weight rather.
Mhm.
That's going to be a sign of larger parasites like tapeworms and things that consume, these are not necessarily microscopic parasites that may infect the blood, but larger parasites in the gut will literally eat your lunch. They'll steal your lunch, so to speak. So that's another symptom. And then, there's a bunch of testing we can do. Stool tests are great for stool parasites, but won't pick up blood parasites.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned in the seminar, a colleague has been doing live and dry blood analysis and dark field microscopy for decades. Now is saying these days everybody has parasites, just like 99, 98% of everybody she's doing blood analysis on is showing up loaded with, including myself, amazing.
Why would that
With,
be? Why has there been such an increase in this? Would you guys?
well, if you talk to Brian Ardis, he was on the show a couple of times.
Hmm.
He's saying it's in the water. Like
Hmm.
it's just something that's ubiquitous in the water. So I'm not entirely sure. I think part of it is just poor nutrition leading to poor immunity, leading to chronic infections. And
Hmm.
there's four types of infections: bacteria, virus, parasite, and fungus. And, that would be, you're more susceptible to everything, in a state of malnutrition.
Hmm.
So I think there's a few reasons. One is, I mean, it's always the same thing. You're comparing resistance to exposure, right?
Hmm.
How much you're exposed to, how strong is your resistance? That's always the case. And
Right.
it's always that balance, that seesaw, situation. So, it's probably a little bit of both. We probably are getting more exposure and we're definitely more susceptible due to malnutrition.
Hmm.
So
And
one of the
uh,
exposure triggers, they can stay alive. Parasite eggs or parasites can stay alive in under the fingernails for 2 days. So the kid goes
Oh.
out and plays in the sandbox, or plays with Fluffy, and then puts his fingers in his mouth or that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So that's a fairly easy, very
hmm,
fairly common vector.
hmm,
Think of, I used to watch this Monsters Inside Me, who's a old
Yeah.
documentary, right? That had
Yeah.
these. One of
Uh-huh.
you talked about the big ones. One of my favorite, sorry, it's kind of weird, but favorite stories was big black guy talked about getting up in the middle of the night, feeling something didn't feel right, and he's starting to go to the bathroom, and he feels something slapping the back of his leg as he's
Ooh.
walking, and
Whoa.
what?
literally pulled one out.
Man, that'll wake you up.
Yeah. So
Good morning.
the
Yeah.
recurring, yeah, recurring mechanism they talked about there was, the bird eats the rodent, so kind of on that uninhibited, alpha wolf sort of mentality. The
Yeah.
rodent has parasites, so it loses inhibition, goes running into the field where it's more obvious to to the bird. So the bird eats that, eats the rodent and then poops out the parasites, and then the rodent eats it, and it just kind of perpetuates that life cycle. So humans can get mixed up in that life cycle, playing in the dirt, playing in the sandbox, cleaning up after the cat or the dog. And then we have so sushi, we should probably talk about preventing, right? If you
Yeah.
eat, when you eat sushi, ginger, right, stimulates
Yeah.
stomach hydrochloric acid to help prevent parasites. Wasabi is very anti-parasitic. One of the companies I used to deal with literally made wasabi pills as part of their anti-parasitic protocol. So if you're eating so what and
Green
then
tea. Don't forget the green
green
tea with
tea,
the sushi.
green tea, EC,
Yeah. Mhm.
ECGC. And the soy sauce is a neurotoxin, so that's not good for the brain. So what I use is lemon juice, mix the wasabi in with the lemon juice, and so I'll dip my sushi into that, kill parasites on contact when we consume it, and then eat the
Mm.
ginger with it.
Yeah.
So
Because we're not going to stop eating sushi. Dr.
No.
V. Sorry.
No way. Serve them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good
And
fat.
bringing the digest forte before is helpful because there's ginger in that as well, right? And there is sweet wormwood in that as well. And then of course I take some Zypan afterward to help with the digestion. But yeah, you're right. When you're looking at it culturally, that's how it's already set up. Ginger specifically is lethal to cryptosporidium, which is a big problem that we had in Wisconsin for a while in the
Well,
water.
it's absinthe wormwood in the
Absinthe. Oh,
not
okay.
sweet,
Okay,
but
thank you.
absinthe. Yeah, sweet wormwood is Chinese wormwood.
Okay.
And what's in there is like the Western wormwood,
Okay.
which is the Artemisia absinthium
Okay.
instead of the sweet wormwood, which is Artemisia annua.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Another symptom that we should mention is rashes, right? So
Yes.
some of the raised,
Yeah,
elevated
skin stuff.
rashes is
Yep.
is another sign potentially of, the diffuse, red in between the bumps, if you will, tends to
Mhm.
be more yeast oriented. That's
Mhm.
also going to typically manifest as neck tension on one side, because the mechanism there is the ileocecal or the valve of Houston opens in the presence of yeast to try to get it out
Mhm.
before it ferments. So
Mm.
structurally, that causes the neck extensors to turn off. So if you're going, I wish I could get an adjustment, trying to figure out your rash, consider yeast. If you're having that low back pain, you're telling your wife that the dress makes her look fat,
Low
then,
GABA.
and you
Never a good
probably
idea.
have low GABA and just need to kill parasites.
Now, you also did say that the most common thing that you're finding low GABA associated with is parasites, right? That was a big
Yes.
aha
Mm.
reminder as well. I would have to say for myself. Yeah. And
Right.
ADHD, right? Now, that's another one that people forget about. I just did a whole presentation for the British Association of Naturopaths, and they're worried about ADHD. And there's definitely a huge connection between parasites and ADHD.
Yeah, mood changes in general. It could
Yeah.
be anxiety, depression, mood swings, irritability. It's a
Poor
neurological
sleep.
effect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or sleep.
Yep, for
GABA's.
sure.
So we need to convert glutamate, the excitatory neurotransmitter, to GABA to shut off the brain to go to sleep.
Right.
So if we don't
Right.
have that GABA, sleep is not deep in quality. We don't shut the
Or
brain
you
off at
can
night.
grinding teeth.
There you go.
Bruxism at night can be parasites too. It's one of those things, you come across some of these this causes everything conditions, right? Like back in the 90s, it was like liver toxicity can
Yeah.
cause everything you have. Then it
Yeah.
was leaky gut can cause everything you have. Parasites can cause, and it's all true. And we have to kind of try to differentiate a little bit, or just walk through a sequence of protocols that covers all of that. That's I call that I've developed the master sequence. It's 12 protocols you walk every patient through at some point, which covers all these things eventually, over a course of care.
Can I
But
give a little
yeah,
pitch for the Virgil technique?
Yeah,
yeah,
do it.
100%.
When we have these, like you're talking about, leaky gut was everything. So I take, okay, what's causing the leaky gut, right? So we
Right.
have the leaky gut reflex, which is at the bottom head of the vastus lateralis, right above the knee on the
Oh,
outside. That area will get tender. I discovered that because of a
well,
patient who
bladder
was.
58.
Yeah, so the patient was pounding anti-inflammatories, in preparation or prior to getting her knee replaced.
Hmm.
And so that was creating a bunch of leaky gut. So with that, I started looking at what were the triggers for the leaky gut, right? And so,
Hmm.
is it adrenal problem? Is it parasites? Is it, inflammation? What are the triggers? So I prioritize basically look at the underlying cause or trigger for the leaky gut. allergies were the same thing. You know, okay, a person has allergies, they have this allergenic response. Is it because of something they inhaled? Is it because their digestion's not working? They're not breaking protein down well? You know, is it a chemical toxicity that's causing the allergenic reaction? You know, there's poor liver detoxification. So prioritization is step two, technically. Step one is, why is the patient there? What's their motivation? But prioritization helps with these things that, you know, everybody comes up with, like, you know, everybody's got leaky gut, or everybody's got spike proteins, or everybody has, you know, allergies. Then we can use that information and the symptoms associated with it and work backwards to what is the true underlying cause.
Totally. That reminds me of a book I was reading on this subject called The Headache Advantage. It's amazingly detailed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's in there.
Yes. Let's get
Look
it
at
out
that
to
4.8, man. That's epic.
Oh,
Look at
nice.
that. Look at that. 93% of all readers giving you a 5-star. That's
Oh,
amazing.
my bribes are paying off.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that
Free
publicly. I'll
sushi.
get banned on Amazon. Joking, of course. Yeah, free sushi, huh? There we go.
Well,
That would do it for me.
the last time you were on, Dr. Gaeta, we talked a lot about artemisinin because you're writing a book
Yeah.
on artemisinin as
Yep.
well. And
Yeah,
so
this is going to be the definitive
there's a
book on the subject.
couple of things that I want us to share that were asked of us at the seminar a lot. Because Dr. Versal had mentioned the amount of things like myrrh, right? Myrrh is another herb
Yes.
that's very helpful
great.
for it. And
Yeah.
the question was asked, he said it was asked again. I think we should repeat it on here so it's recorded, of the approach with myrrh, not always just being 4 days on, 4 days off, right? Which is usually the way that it's been stated.
I mean, right. So, Carrie Bone would combine it with Chinese wormwood, Artemisia annua, in a 4 days on, 9 days off, pulsed, alternating pattern.
Yeah.
And I think that was partly for compliance, for patient convenience, patient
Sure.
compliance.
Adherence,
So,
I think is what we call it now.
yeah, exactly. So the research on myrrh indicates that it may stimulate an allergic reaction, possibly in some people, after 9 days of continuous administration. And that's going to be individual to that person. It's going to depend on the dose. I think higher doses, like Carrie's recommending, of 8 a day,
Mm.
will make that a little more likely. Lower doses, such as Dr. Versal uses, might not do that at all. In other words, it's the dose makes the poison, so to speak. Not that it's poisonous, but I think that triggering an allergic response is probably a very dose-related thing. So, I typically go 4 or 5 days with both those herbs, although Carrie has recently changed his dosing recommendations on artemisinin forte from 6 a day to 3 a day. So 48 grams to 24 grams of starting herb per day, and has increased the duration to 7 days. So that was kind of interesting. So I think he's probably more like week on, week off now with the Chinese wormwood. And this is all based on a 1989 paper that's never been, it's a pilot study that was never replicated. But it's something that, we've discovered that the liver learns to break down artemisinin very quickly. But it forgets how to do that if you take a break.
Interesting. So when you say 3 a day, not 3 all at once, we're talking, is there a
No,
shelf
I
life of
wouldn't
it?
suggest all at once. No.
Yeah, right. But would it be
Yeah.
morning, evening, afternoon, evening? I mean, is
It
there
depends on the patient. I mean, most of my patients, they choose a twice a day dose, which fits better because I'm recommending intermittent fasting, so they're eating 2 meals.
Mhm.
So I'm usually so it would be like a 2 and 1 or a 1 and 2.
Okay. And Dr. V, you had a lot to say about that this weekend. So let's repeat
Couldn't
that.
I?
Yeah.
I'm like chomping, like, give me the mic. So per Carrie Bone, the trouble handling it is P450's ability to break it down, right? So
Yes.
phase 1 detoxification. Fortunately, we have a reflex right at spleen 21 on the right side where the elbow crease meets the side. That reflex is phase 1 detox. That's cytochrome P450 enzymes. And so, patient tolerance is how well that P450 pathway is functioning for that patient. So that's where the variable is going to come in. If they
Yeah.
have the antioxidants and don't have other viruses that are already upregulating that pathway, then they'll handle the product better, longer, potentially higher doses. And so, yes, as you mentioned, I tend to be a low dose kind of guy.
Yeah.
So, I tend to see that those can play out. I test it against the P450 to see how their liver, how their body can tolerate, over time and when we need to give it a break. So we
Right.
also have tools in our bag, if there's, as you mentioned, reactions, we have Antranex, right? Help clear it out of the liver faster.
Right.
Remember, there's going to be endotoxins, in other words, toxins from die-off, especially if we're killing parasites. So GI adsorb, do we want to use Antranex to flush it through the liver faster, or do we want to use, often a lot of parasitic protocols will include some kind of a binder, right? To
Yep.
bind up those
Very
toxins
important.
out of the gut because
Very important.
as parasites die, they're going to liberate toxic metals, for example, right? Or all these other endotoxins that can create that rash, that reaction as things are dying off. So, we may be able to get a higher intensity or a faster relief with fewer symptoms by binding some of those toxins as we kill the parasites.
Yes. Yes. Great point, Scott.
Mhm.
And that's so we were talking about that specifically with myrrh, right? That's one of the questions that came up.
Or artemisinin.
Yeah.
Or artemisinin, both. Okay, great.
Mhm.
What else should we be giving people as tools if they're discovering that maybe they have a parasite or they have, you know, uh, they're running through toilet paper too fast? What are some other tools we can give them to help bring them where they need to be?
Yeah, well, one of the other causes of that, because it's typically a yeast-related situation, that wiping frequently, and it's
Hmm.
usually yeast overgrowth from sugar intake.
No, we
Um,
didn't mention that yet, did we?
yeah. So it's so I had a patient who had a terrible yeast infection. We kind of sorted out everything, all her concerns, and so she hadn't been in months. And she calls me in a panic and says, I have this terrible yeast infection. I've had it for several weeks. I'm like, why didn't you call me weeks ago instead of like in a panic? And it was, it was bad. It was just this thick, profuse, smelly discharge.
Oof.
And I, and as soon as she could come in was Thursday. She called me on a Monday morning in the clinic. And I said, well, what do you have in the house? And long story short, she had garlic forte.
There
I
you
said,
go.
okay, take 3 a day that's the only thing she had that was relevant, but it was a good one. She comes in Thursday. She started taking 3 a day for those 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, took one Thursday morning, came in for her morning appointment, and gives me a big hug. She's like, it's gone.
Wow.
Completely
Wow.
resolved. No, it's just got better every day. And I woke up this morning, no discharge. This is after several weeks, and 3 garlic fortes sorted that out. So I tend to combine that with the berberine. And
Hmm.
garlic, is effective against all 4 classes of pathogens. And you can wear it as a necklace to ward off evil spirits. Uh, but that's a good one. And then, we have the wormwood complex is very good. Those are sort of the traditional Western herbs like stamona and cloves and black walnut, used for centuries in Native American medicine and Western herbal medicine for parasites. But my current thinking, as I said before, is I think everybody should be doing I've done it. I recommend it to all patients at some point. Now, it's not necessarily the first thing we do, but I think it's a wise thing to do, routinely.
So remember, every or different parasites or different classes of parasites respond to different herbs and
Right.
therapies. So parasites often run in groups, right? So if you have one, you may have other types of parasites as well. So we may have to cycle, do artemisinin for a period and then then maybe it's wormwood or I'm bringing that up partially because many of us are using standard
Mm,
process products. Zymex
yeah.
2 has a very different mechanism, more of a
Bison.
kind of
Yep.
an enzymatic digestion of the parasites. So
That's right.
sometimes we'll want to go that way. When that one shows up, I often find that there's a pet vector. So, consider if you have, a dog or cat in the house, 70% of the vectors for parasites are pets. And so we may want to include a Zymex 2 for Fluffy while you're trying to kill these so that you don't keep reciprocating after you're doing all the hard work as the patient or as a sufferer of parasites. We may not want to kill, we don't want to kill Fluffy, but we want to kill the parasites that Fluffy has so that we don't, you don't get parasites every time the dog licks you and so on.
You bring up an excellent point. Just last week, I had a lady whose eosinophils were over 11%. And she loves her dogs. She's always with her dogs. And her question was, well, should I start doing things for my dogs too? And I'd say, yes, absolutely. So you're saying Zymex 2 would be your first thought to give to the dogs, because there's not going to be any issue with that. What are other things that we can do for the pets to be able to keep them from passing it back and
part
forth?
of what I like about Zymex 2 is it's a capsule that we can open onto their food.
Yeah.
Right. So you just open the capsule onto the food. For whatever reason, it just seems to be the one that shows up when I muscle test for the pets, or for the vector. And again, it's easy. I don't know if you're going to be able to, maybe do the liquid wormwood and pour it on the dog's food. They may not, may not appreciate that. Yeah.
Now, I know that SP does have a vet on staff that can answer these questions a little more specifically, right, for them. But I was happy to hear that Zymex 2 is something that you were suggesting as well for the pets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you have something on that, Dr. Gaeta?
No, I think that
because I saw your little fluffy parasite sharer in the background running around.
Oh yeah, he's a little parasite breeder.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, any last thoughts, guys, on this parasite situation? I think, the one that I wanted to share with you was the green tea piece. We talked about that with the green tea.
Yeah.
Vitanox has been a part of parasite protocols quite a bit because of its and we talked a little bit about, I think, green tea last week, Dr. V. We talked about Vitanox for a few reasons.
Vitanox, excuse me, and OPC are both said to kill the eggs.
Right.
So, if we're killing them, and that's part of the reason, part of the mechanism with cycling on and off antiparasitics, right? Is, we stop taking it, then the eggs hatch. We need to kill them again. So part of the way to accelerate that protocol is to include something like OPC or Vitanox to potentially obliterate, as they call it, obliterate those eggs. Yeah. Good point. Good pearl.
Yeah. So and high tannin teas,
right? Peppermint tea.
Yeah, peppermint and green are really excellent. The tannins tend to be astringent, and green tea is astringent. And the reason is these tannins, when they get into the tissue, cause protein cross-linking. So it's like the proteins join elbows, and that makes for a more tight gut that's more resistant to incursion by whatever, the parasite or anything like that. So plus the green tea is a prebiotic. So it also benefits the microbiome as well as being a tannin astringent. So a lot of good reasons to do that. And yeah, we didn't really get into it, but Dr. Versal made an important point. These are always cycling protocols. I tend to do a batch days 1 through 4, different batch days 5 through 9, and then no supplements for 5 days 10 through 14, so that the babies think the coast is clear, and then they reemerge, and then you blam them again on day 1 of the next cycle, the 2-week cycle. So it's very helpful, I just think it's a wise thing to do this routinely, as I said.
Just another reason to drink green tea every day too. By the way, decaf green tea was what I was sharing.
Oh, sure.
And again, Dr. V, I'm trying to get one up on Dave Asprey, right? The guy who tries to biohack. So I use now my decaf green tea as my base to brew my coffee in the morning. So take that.
Oh, brilliant.
Right, so I'm getting the ECGCs there. Here's another question I think I get an awful lot, because you were just getting into that, is how long does somebody need to be on these protocols to truly feel like they have gotten through it, right? They've done enough. What are you seeing now, Dr. V? I know you have a beautiful way to test for people, right? Usually, but here's the thing: to be realistic, the conditions can change, right? If you say to somebody it's going to be 2 to 3 months, they could go rolling around, with a bunch of animals in the woods, and now it's a whole new problem. So it's difficult to tell them definitively. But on average, what are you finding is the appropriate amount of time needed for someone to address something like this to get it put into the past?
Dr. Gaeta, it looks like you're ready to hit the mic.
Oh no, yeah, if you want, I'm happy to. But yeah, so you're going to get the most clearance in the first two-week cycles. That's where most of the action's going to happen. After that, you're just sort of searching for survivors, and so I tend to do 4 to 6 cycles.
Okay.
Each cycle is 2 weeks, so that's a total of 2 to 3 months. And honestly, I think that's just a good thing to do. And it allows you time to do a thorough job, that you're going through several cycles, at least 4, and that's 2 months.
Yeah. Okay.
So remember the alpha wolf howling at the moon?
Right.
We haven't talked about the full moon cycles yet.
That's right.
So the first answer to, Dustin, your appropriate question, there's so many variables, do they have that dog or cat that they're, perpetuating the cycle with? First off, do they have a ton of parasites? I mean, one of the worst parasitic cases I had was a dentist. So he was exposed to mercury all his career, but he grew up on a farm playing barefoot in the cow poop, and so I mean we literally could see this a big trematode crawling around in his scalp. We could see it move when we did techniques, and he was all into using like TENS units to he'd put them over where they were, and he could see these parasites get active and moving around. It was, and he had crazy lumps, and it was a mess.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean that was active crazy protocols for a year, and in his case. But then the other part of that is, I mean, I still do parasite cleanses around the full moon as well. So I mean that's another way to just kind of keep ahead of it potentially. Take your whatever your favorite antiparasitic seems to be, whether it's gut flora, Zymex-2, wormwood, oregano of some sort, ginger, all these different things, great tools we have. I usually take, a few of those around the full moon as well, just to kill them as they become a little bit more active.
I do the same. That's a good practice, I think. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Great. Any last thoughts, guys, before we start to wrap this up?
Oh, I just had last thought is what makes this even more important. I was just speaking at a conference here in Colorado recently with Lee Merritt, who's was a retired orthopedic surgeon, and she's gotten really more into natural things. And she is pretty convinced that at least many, I think she would go beyond many, but many cancer patients have as part of their etiology parasite infections. So and I just did a literature search, and there's, at least 1 or 2 dozen studies supporting that. And even NIH acknowledges that 17% of all cancer cases are related to infection. Probably that number should be higher. So we get into this in the cancer course at cancercourse.com. And it's a thing that makes the parasite protocols even more important.
Yeah.
Is that it may possibly have a cancer preventative effect.
A very, very good segue into what the future courses that we're going to have you come out and teach for us, Dr. Gaeta, for sure. Next week on Dr. V and I are going to take on sleep a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about sleep maxing, because Dr. Gaeta and I are going to be teaching a 4-part series coming up here February 16th. Is that when the first of the
first class, 16th, 4 Mondays. 4
Mondays. Dr. Gaeta, you're teaching the first, then I'm doing the following 3. And a lot of this is in preparation for an upcoming immersion weekend in sleep at the Rest Yourself River Ranch, March 6th through the 8th. I'm going to be hosting for individuals to really learn all the things and experience all the things and get a little bit of luxury, downtime, right? A little dopamine detox.
You're the healer.
Yeah. So next week, Dr. V and I are going to go through a bunch of sleep maxing truth or trends. And then we'll finally get to that urolithin A. So we love getting all these subject suggestions. So please keep the comments coming. If there's something that we missed in this discussion, please put it in the comments. Ask the questions. We're more than happy to make sure that we're sharing with you what we've learned and what we continue to learn and sometimes unlearn in some ways.
Indeed.
And
I wanted to give your listeners my first two chapters of the book.
oh,
So I'll give you the link
wow.
so they can read the first two. Again, it's a draft. It'll get edited something a little more, but they're pretty done.
About Artemis?
Our Chinese wormwood, yeah.
Oh,
I wrote the
wow.
introduction in the first two chapters, and I'd love to give that to your listeners. So
Okay.
I'll send you the link for the show notes.
Fantastic. All right. Great. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it. Dr. V, you got anything else you want to say before we go?
This was a good one.
Yeah.
As it was mentioned early on, just about everybody has parasites, right? So
Yeah.
let's prevent cancer. We didn't talk about arthritis and a lot of these other triggers
Right.
that go along with it. But consider the full moon. Well, I think we just had a full moon last night, but so maybe grab it while you can.
Yeah, now's a good time.
Yeah. Kill those parasites, and so you can be a good husband or good spouse, right?
All right, everybody. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next one.